get this show started. I'm Allison Stanfield, Assistant Director for Florence Lauderdale Tourism. I want to welcome you to our new Visitor Center and on this very historic day. This is something that's been 30 years in the making. We do apologize for the cramped space. We had no idea the type of turnout. We're very excited about that. So if you'll just kind of bear with us and pretend whoever you're crammed up next to is your best friend, we would appreciate it. I would also like to recognize Mayor Vicki Haddon. Mayor, thank you. You and Lennon. Also, one of our tourism board members, Kelly Computis, is here. And I want to thank our staff, Susie, Georgia, Jane, Chris, Hadley, John, Georgia. Everyone's here. So, we'll go ahead and I'll turn this over to Andreas and we'll get started.
Well, thank you very much for coming. I'm pretty much overwhelmed with you all coming out to this event. When we planned it, we had no idea, and I want to apologize for the lack of space. But at the same time, I'm very happy you're all here. So thank you very much for coming out. For everybody who doesn't know me, I was born in Switzerland. But looking back, I guess I know now that my soul somehow was born here, I guess. Because the Muscle Shoals sound brought me here. And to quote the Mark Norman's Top Boy and Donnie Fritz song, I thank my funky stars for that. And I'm excited, and that's another line, you know, that to be here in the room with many of the kings of my record collection. I'm a music producer, but also a huge fan of the Muscle Shoals sound, and all incarnations of the Muscle Shoals sound. I would like to thank a few people before we start, but I want to make it quick. I want to thank Florence Tourism for providing us this space. I want to thank Buffalo Wild Wings who brought us some food. I would like to thank Funky Town Groups Records who finally released the Muscle Shoals Horns albums on CD. Design the posters and the shirts, and to Jamie Barrier, who was also in a local band called the Pioneer Haynes, who screen printed them, the posters and the shirts by hand. So if you ever need any print shop, he's affordable, he's great to work with, and obviously what he does looks good. All right.
What can we buy them CD?
There's a merch stand out here, and they'll let you know, and everybody's be happy to sign it too. And Georgia or somebody will tell you exactly how it works in the end. I would also like to thank a few other people, and I will miss some because I don't know all of you, but I certainly want to thank Bob Ray for being here. I would like to on many of the recordings that ended up being on the Muscle Shoals Horns albums. I would also like to thank David Hood and Jimmy Johnson, who both played. Other players who played on it are Ken Bell, Roger Hawkins, Roger Clark, Larry Byron, Tim Henson, Barry Beckett, and Tom Roddy. And some of them are no longer with us, but I certainly want to include them in this celebration because they were part of it. Before we start real quick, I have a treat for somebody here real quick. And the reason is the Country Music Hall of Fame in Nashville put out a CD compilation called Night Train to Nashville a few years ago that coincided with an exhibit they had. And both Harrison and Harvey were part of the Nashville scene before they became part of the Muscle Shoals scene. And the compilation CD won a Grammy. And Harvey already got his, I've been told. But Harrison, they never knew how to contact him, so they gave it to me because they thought, yeah, I'm fine, I'm going to find him. So I would like to give this. He was a member of a band called Johnny Jones and the Imperial 7, was featured on the record. So this is for you. Many more things other than it's my pleasure to introduce these four gentlemen to you that probably most of you know. That's why you're here. Muscle Shoals Horns were formed in 1970 by Ronnie Eads, baritone saxophone, and other horns, but mainly Harvey Thompson, tenor saxophone, and Harrison Calloway on trumpet. And soon after, found a very talented trumpet player here in town called Charles Rose, who completed the classic lineup of the Muscle Shoals Horns. In that configuration, they played all into the 80s, and then Ronnie left the group, came back for a little bit, but then left the group again. So did Harrison a little bit later, and they were joined by many other great horn players, including Jim Horn, Doug Moffett, Walter King, B.B. King's nephew, Steve Herman, and many other people I cannot all name here, but please feel yourself included here just as well. And the Muscle Shoals Horns with Charles and Harvey are still going strong, and were just featured on an album by Fish and Buddy Guy. So we all hope that the Muscle Shoals Horns in whatever form will live on for a long, long time. All right, I would like...
I'd like to point out that one of our associates is sitting right here in the front row, Jack Peck.
Jack Peck.
All right.
Jack's experience here at the Muscle Shoals scenes predated ours. He played on When a Man Was a Woman.
All right. Moderating for maybe about 20 minutes. Whoever has a question would like to include that too if possible, but we want to keep it short to half an hour because I know you guys are standing, but you feel free to mix mingle with everybody after. But I would like to kind of have them tell their own story, and I would have to have each of them just kind of tell me real quick how they found music or how music found them.
You looking at me first? Well, I started playing when I was 10 years old. And I'm 73, but I look 33. Love music and I had to play something, and my grandparents bought me a saxophone, so that was it from then on, and went through school, barely made it through school, but I made it through, but music was my life, and that's all I really cared about, and sometimes I'd practice 8-10 hours a day, because that's what I live for, with music, so that's how I got started in it, and then was playing with rock and roll band called the Esquires around town, and then went to Pensacola, Florida with the band. And then during that time, I think there was a shuffle up here. Barry Beckett came up to play piano. Barry and I worked together in a group. So after a while, Barry called me. He said, "Get up here. Rick wants to put a horn section together." And boy, that just fit my fancy. I said, "Okay, I think I can do that." And then so I came up, and I believe I was making about $15 a week when I first come up. Right. But if you're in any kind of thing and you want to succeed, whatever it takes, you can do it if you've got that desire to be in music. You can do what you want to do. So I started that way, and then through Rick helped us out quite a bit, and Jimmy Johnson also with studio work, and we had all this amazing group of musicians around here, Travis, Bob, Dave, Randy, Jim, Mickey. So after we got into the studio business, it sort of came easy because we had all these people, man, just geniuses, every one of them. And these guys here all music majors except the redneck here. But they put up with me, for a while, so we became the Muscle Shoals Horns, and the rest of it is history. So I thank the Lord.
I grew up in Tuscaloosa, and in high school, the coaches wanted me to play football so I could run and catch really good. My nose didn't like it and would bleed. And my brother was in the band playing trumpet, and so he said, well, come on, get in the band. And let's say, because they would have killed me. And I got a lot of experience in Tuscaloosa by playing with local bands together at fraternity houses at the University of Alabama. From there to here.
Well, I was born in Sheffield, and played trombone in the Sheffield High School Band. I see two other Sheffield High School Band trombonists in the audience. One's David Hood, the other was William Hobotter. I had three brothers. We all played brass instruments. I'm the only one who stayed with it. So I went to college in Kentucky, Murray State University to major in music. And my plan was to become a band director. And after 1 year, I changed plans. I wanted to be a trombonist in a symphony orchestra. And then I started playing in a rock band. And so that was of great interest to me. And the spring break of my my junior year, I was in a car wreck, and I was home for the summer, and just in a bad mood, couldn't do anything, and I was on crutches, and my father went out to empty the trash one day, and he came back in with a sax player named Sonny Royal. He said, Charles, this gentleman's a professional sax player, and he says his horn section is looking for tromboners. And they were a competing section to the Muscle Shoals Horns. This was summer 1971. And they took me down to Quinn Ivy's studio, and we did a dummy session. David Johnson was the engineer, and they put on a tape, had some empty tracks, and we put some horns down on head session. They saw that I was about as good in it as they were, so they hired me. The first session I ever did was someone we later worked for at Malaco's, E.Z. Hill. That was the first session I ever played on. And the very first track, there was a song called Hold On. My headphones weren't even plugged in. And these big headphones we had back then, they were so loud anyway, I heard the bleed from the other guy's headphones, so I got through the track, and then I noticed my headphones weren't plugged in, and I was too embarrassed to tell anybody. I reached down and plugged it in and didn't tell anybody. So a few months later, Jimmy Johnson, sitting right here, hired Sonny and trumpet player Stacy Goss and I come over and play with these three guys on a Jim Capaldi record, and that's how I started working with Muscle Shoals Horns.
Well, I guess that leaves it up to me. I'm kind of seem like I'm the father of the group, so to speak. I was born and raised in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And ironically, my parents were both Tony laborers. My dad worked for the railroad. I don't have the Chattanooga, Tennessee Railroad. And when I was in high school, the principal announced that we were going to have a band. And I signed up to play. And they said, what instrument? So I said, saxophone. Well, back at that time, Little Richard and Fast Domino, if you remember some of the older musicians had a line saxophone. So I wanted to play the saxophone. We went to this music store, and the saxophone was $1,900 at that time, and we couldn't afford it. So on the way out of the music store, the salesman said, Mr. Calloway, there's a cornet up there for $96, $5 a week. Daddy said, let him have it. So I'm wondering, when I got home with 3 little valves up there, all these saxophones got so many keys. I'm wondering how could I get that many notes with 3 little valves. So I practiced and practiced, which later turned into me being awarded 7 scholarships at Tennessee State. And the way I got into the recording business is an artist that was recorded named Earl Gaines and Roscoe Shelton, great blues artists. So on Saturdays, coming from the campus, they didn't serve dinner. We only had lunch and breakfast, and we'll get cold cuts, which is orange juice and bologna sandwiches to go home with for dinner. So I was on the way to practice with my buddy Jimi Hendrix, which lived right off the campus. I had my cold cuts and my trumpet. I didn't care about no books. I had my trumpet. So I see this black Cadillac pull up beside me, and they say, "Hey, Pocket, you want a gig?" He said, "I'm Earl Gaines. We're going to Jackson, Tennessee. I'm paying $15 and a bologna sandwich." I couldn't wait. So on the way down to Jackson, the saxophone player was humming me the lines. He said, he's going to start off with that. And I had memorized, so when we got to the gig, Earl sang his first song, and I had memorized the chart in my head. So when we got back to Nashville, some of you guys remember WLAC Records, Randy Records, where they had somebody, Imperial Fire, they had a record company. They said they got a guy out there at Tennessee State know how to write the notes and can memorize. So they called me. It's kind of funny. So anyway, it ended up with me coming down to work with Rick and doing a song on Roscoe Shelton called "Strain on My Heart." And it went to #1 blues record. And Rick called and invited me to come work for him. And I said, well, my mom and dad has put so much in me, they want me to graduate from college. I got to stay up here 6 more months. And after I graduated, my wife told me, "Harrison, you got a money order." She said, "Rick Hall wants you to come to Muscle Shoals and work with some of the musicians down on Clarence Clyde section." So make a long story short, I met Ronnie, and at the time we had another homeboy, and I called Harvey. I said, "Oh, we got a paradise down here, man. We can make some money. They hiring black musicians." So Harvey got out of the Army, so that left me, Harvey, and Ronnie, and we said, I was doubling on trumpet and trombone, which, as you brass players know, after coming with that trombone, you have to carry your mouth up to play the trumpet. So sometime I called Jack in to be the 4th horn, and she said, well, this guy comes from live in Sheffield named Charles Rhodes. He's a good trombone. So like Charles said, we called him in to sit in on a session. He's been with us, and he's really doing a great job. Where I left off with arranger. I'd like to give him credit. He's a good arranger.
Oh, yes,
Last but not least, I would like to thank all you guys for keeping up with the Muscle Shoals Horns and enjoying our music for the last 3 decades.
I was about to ask you too how the Muscle Shoals Horns got formed, but I guess you just kind of covered that. I also want to point out that what you see behind them is 300 album covers that albums they played on. So I'm sure they guessed that, but I still wanted to point it out, which is a pretty impressive number, and it's by far on everything. And I know that Travis is involved in all of them, probably played those many records too. So for everybody who's not a musician here, that's a pretty impressive feat, and then you have that talent in your town. It's pretty unique. It's not, I don't think there's any town of this size that has been putting out as much music and as much great and successful music as this area. And you might not be aware of that, but I am, because I'm not from here. So I was like, yeah, this is a funky place down in Alabama. Funky, best meaning of the word. All right, well, Ronnie, please tell me a little bit about some of the sessions for those albums and how how did you guys like become artists?
Oh boy, let me see if I can remember. Anybody got any focus factor? We,
I don't know what that is.
We were doing session work, and I can't even remember how we got into doing, the first album was through Barry Beckett. And don't remember how we first got started on that album.
Well, you remember, after Jimmy, David, and Barry, after they left, they were working at Fame Records. They were the one responsible for a lot of the music. But Rick, by being who he was and who he is today, is a great producer. I think the guys that played for him wanted to better themselves, and they wanted part of the company. So Jimmy and them, they went over and they started their own company, Muscle Shoals Rhythm Section. So our contract had run out with Rick. So when they left, I said, well, we need to form us a horn section, and where we can freelance and go play everywhere. So that's when we started the Muscle Shoals Horns. I think that's correct.
And then on the albums, I think Jim and Barry said something about y'all need to do a solo album. So that's when we did that.
Yeah.
First album, and Barry and Jim got us a deal on it, and then we did that one, and then we did the second one. The first one I think was with Bang Records, and the second one with Ariola.
Yes.
And then the third one was with Monument Records and with Fred Foster. And I think Barry produced all three of them.
We did.
We produced the first.
Right. Fred Foster said, he said, man, you guys are great. He said, here's the money. Y'all just go do it. So Fred would come down about once a week and go to sleep in the producer's chair. Didn't he? And that's where we got the expression. Every time we talk to each other, we say, set him up. Set him up. That's how we did that.
Harvey, you're in many ways kind of a secret weapon of the horn section, that in a lot of ways you were called to play all sorts of horns. I know everybody kind of played multiple horns, but maybe you can share what kind of horns you've been asked to play in sessions.
Well, the soprano, the alto, tenor, and I've also played baritone. And a little flute, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think you played a. Hey Harvey, I think you played a comb on the Fame Gang record, didn't you?
I don't know.
Yeah, it was a comb.
Harvey called me up one morning, I think it was about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. He just got home from being across the pond doing something, and I heard something. I said, what? And all of a sudden, Harvey said, oh no, you ever heard bagpipes? 4 in the morning, man.
Oh, that was a good day.
So, while the horns mainly played in the studio, they also had a few chances to go out and play live. And in fact, Charles and Harvey are about to go out with Live Loved again this summer on a big American tour. But I would like to ask Charles how that Elton John tour came about, and maybe you can share a memory or two. It was not just memorable, I think, because of the Elton John tour, but also because one of the shows at the Madison Square Garden ended up being John Lennon's last live performance as a guest of Elton John. So maybe you can elaborate on that a little bit.
What's your question?
Tell me a little bit about how the Elton John thing came about, a few memories.
We had never worked in the studio with him. Since then, I have worked on some tracks for him in the studio, in recent years. But Elton had just cut an album using the Tower of Power horns, and they weren't available for touring. And so his manager, John Reed, their office, someone that worked in their office was the sister-in-law of Jerry Wexler. Connie, I can't remember her last name, but she was
Renee's
sister-in-law, yeah. So they said, well, call your brother-in-law, Jerry, and ask him who he recommends. And we had been working sessions, produced by Jerry and Barry Beckett. So Jerry Wexler recommended. So we heard that that John Lennon was going to sit in with us at Madison Square Gardens. It was Thanksgiving night of 1974, and I think the story is that Elton had recorded Lucy in the Skies, and they had a bet that if it went to #1, that John would come out and play live with him, and it went to #1, so he agreed. So he came out and flew. We were based in New York and flying to outlying cities, so he came out and flew with us to our Boston gig, I think. And so we were around him a little bit, but then we were supposed to rehearse down in the record plant one night, and we got there before the rest of the band. And we walked down the hall, and there was John Lennon standing there with a bunch of the crew, and he said, well, here's the horn section. And we walked up, and he said, hi, I'm John Lennon. Like we didn't know who he was. And Elton wanted him to do, they were going to do Lucy in the Skies and Whatever Gets You Through the Night. And he wanted John to sing Imagine, and John did not want to sing Imagine for some reason. He hadn't been performing a lot. And so that's when I learned Elton was a real Beatles fan, because he just started playing Beatles songs, and he would play about 4 bars of one song, and John would go, nada. And then he must have played through about 30 Beatles songs, just 4 or 5 bars, and then he got to I Saw Her Standing There, and John said, yeah, I remember that. And so it turned out that was, all those songs said Lennon McCartney, but that was a Paul McCartney song. Paul had written that song entirely, and so when we performed it that night, he said, I would like to do a song by no Beyonce of mine.
Thank you, George. Harrison, for especially the non-musicians here, would you please kind of describe how a horn recording session works, what it takes to prepare, and how the session looks like?
Well, I come from, like I said, Tennessee State, and we were taught when we graduated all about horns to do written music, meaning we had what we call letter charts, because we could read the CDs and EFs by written notes. So when I started getting into the rhythm, especially here in Muscle Shoals, the musicians here had what they call number charts. And I had never seen this. It means like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 stood for every letter in the musical scale. C, D, E, F, G would be, if you were in F, that was #1. And if you were in C, that was also #1. And I wonder why you did that. And it comes to if you're on a session and the artist starts singing and their voice got hoarse and you started off in one key and they had to switch, that means you would have to write the whole letter chart over. And thanks to Barry Beckett and Jimmy and David, they created the number chart so they wouldn't have to change. They could change keys without having to go through all that headache about trying to play an F sharp or G sharp. So the rhythm section, Muscle Shoals rhythm section started that. And I was on a session, I believe, with somebody, and I took one of the letter charts, the number, and put it in my horn case, and took it home and I studied it. And I studied that and got it down pretty good, and I started kind of telling the guys that we do head sessions, and I finally began to write the number charts as well as the letter charts. And we just had, the 4 of us just clicked, and I love doing those head sessions. I have written for Dr. Hook, the guy that we called here, and I had this big score, man. And he said, play it down, Harry. He said, man, tat it up. I'm going to pay you anyway. I want you guys just to come around the studio and, what you hear, Charles? Da-da-da-da. Harvey? And we'll put that together. Run it what you hear. So It's because we were able to, we were good at doing head charts as well as written charts. And so they said, call these guys from Muscle Shoals, man. They can read music and they play without them notes. So we were comfortable wherever we were going to record. You know.
I'd say that probably, when I started working with you guys, probably 95% of our sessions were by head, you know, with no charts. And we didn't even have the chord charts. The chord charts were long gone by the time we got there, so we would just go in the control room and play the tape a few times with parts.
Harrison, wave at your dog.
Oh, my baby.
So I would just like to do one more quick round and we'll open it up. If each one of you might please share like a favorite session or a favorite moment of your career that you would like to share with everybody, either as part of the whole section or just individually, and what sticks out when you think about it without thinking about it too much.
Well, what I'm thinking about is that Elton John tour. And we went out there, Jerry Wexler called us, and we went to California, and then they took us from the airport over to Universal City where we were rehearsing. And met Elton and all the band, and they were rehearsing. They just got through the rehearsal, and he said, y'all be ready in a couple of 3 days to start practicing? And we'd already done our homework, and we said, when's the next rehearsal? It's at 7 o'clock, and Chuck said, we'll be there, we'll be ready. So we went there, and we did, I think it was 6 songs or something, and we had just been booked on about 12, 14 dates with them. And Elton came running over and he said, stop, stop, stop. And he came running over and he said, I want y'all on the whole tour. Can you work it out to where you can play the whole tour? And we said, well, okay. So we might be able to. So I remember that real well. Man. It was a really great tour, and Elton, really took good care of us. Session-wise, man, I enjoyed doing all the sessions. They were just great because you had such an incredible group of musicians, especially here in town, to work with. I mean, what's hard about, they'd already laid the tracks down, everything was perfect, everything was great, and very easy. Work had been done with all these guys, man. So, session work, I loved it. Every second of it. It was great.
How about you, Harvey?
Well, these guys have put the rhythm tracks down, and like Ronnie said, the rest was easy for us. And we were just like a hand on a glove as far as playing together.
We worked together, slept together, ate together, did everything together.
Right.
And, one thing I remember, we went to Nashville one time and did a thing with Conway Twitty.
Watch it.
I know. And Conway came over to the studio, and he came in, and we, you can't guess who he did. So we stood up, he said, no, y'all sit down. He said, I've heard about you guys all my life. He said, no, won't y'all play on my session? I came by here to see you guys. So to me, the way we worked with doing the head charts is in the studio, we'd sit in the studio for a while and come up with the parts. Harrison would come up with the parts. We had this thing sort of organized so we didn't step on each other's toes and get in everybody's way. And Charles would say, okay, Ron, you play the 1, Hard 3, I'll play the 1, and we would work the song up in the studio. Right there, and then we'd probably play it right before we went out, and we would run the session down 1 or 2 times, and then we start cutting. And to me, that was the most amazing thing to do. And a lot of artists would just come by and say, man, we just got to see how you guys work. But we worked as a team.
Charles, do you have one or two that stick out for you?
Well, sometimes when we worked, the artists weren't there, or sometimes they were there and they weren't very hands-on. Like we played on the James Brown album, we never met James Brown. And then when we had our first album, we were supposed to play on some gigs with him, opening for him, and he canceled all of them. Notorious no-shows, so we never got to meet him, but we're on his like double CD. We're not on his greatest single CD hit, but we're on the double CD, on a song called Too Funky in Here. But our artist, I remember being always really fun to work with because he was so enthusiastic, and his enthusiasm was contagious, was Joe Tex.
Oh, man. Yeah.
And he was just always a joy to work for. We did a song that was one of his later hits called I Don't Want to Bump With No Big Fat Woman. Boyd Jones actually wrote an arrangement for the UNA marching band to play of that song, which I found kind of, and if you remember the song, The Eyes of Mark's Vehicle, that's a lick harmonized in fourths, so I guess Harrison came up with this lick on Don't Want to Bump No Big Fat Woman, and it was based in fourths, like that Eyes of Mark song. Joe loved that, so every session after that, he called it the Indian lick. He called it like wah, 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 wah. So every session after that, he said, give me one of those Indian licks.
How about you, Harrison?
Well, to follow up on that, Charles just come in. One of my favorite artists to work with was Joe Tex. And the way we come up, we call it an Indian call. If you notice some of them Egyptian movies, you see those guys come out, boo, 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 boo. And like you said, they're voiced and forced. So Joe come up to me and said, yeah, I got $200, man. Can you come up with a lick? I'm gonna say, ain't gonna bump no more with the big fat woman. And I thought, I said, da-da. Man, everybody run out of the studio, and before we know it, they said, we want the Indian lick again. And I want to tell one more story about Elton John. He was, by the way, him and B.B. King were two of the most fantastic people that ever toured and played on the scene. The scene with Elton John, after his niece, Jerry Wexler's niece, said, go down south and hire these guys, the Muscle Shoals Horns, to go on tour with it, because Tower of Power was booked, Chicago, all the big horn section had hit albums right back then. So Jerry Wexler had Elton's manager to call Muscle Shoals. We were doing sessions with Jimmy, and the phone rang. We were playing with Bobby Womack, and somebody said, Harrison, would you come to the phone? You got a long distance call. So I went to the phone. I said, hold up, Bobby, I'll be back. And I get the phone. This guy said, this is so-and-so, I'm Elton John's manager. Would you care to go on tour with Elton John? At the time, I didn't know Elton. I said, hey man, I'm on a Bobby Womack session. I get back with you in 5. So I went back to the session and started playing. Bobby Womack was doing, I'm looking for love. And Ronnie said, Cap, who was that on the phone? I said, it was Elton John, man. What did you tell her? I said, get back with me in 5. I said, fool, you better go back. So I went back and called him, and first he said, would you be interested in going out with Elton? I said, Elton? I said, how much would you charge? I said, oh, I said, we'd go out for about $10,000 a week. He said, no problem. What about if we pay you $25,000 a week? So I went back and told the guys, and the rest is history. We not only did the United States tour, we went over his hometown for Christmas and stayed another 3 weeks. And I must say, it's been a pleasure, man, working with these cats. They're like blood for me, and and I love them.
Probably, I was still pretty young, just probably a year into my working with Muscle Shoals Horns. We were called to do a Schlitz malt liquor commercial at Muscle Shoals Sound, and the artist was Wilson Pickett. And and he was there, you know. And so we were, it was, I guess, a 60-second jingle, and we were coming up with parts, and there was no vocal on it, so one of the producers suggested, Wilson, why don't you go out and do a pilot vocal, you know, to give them something to base their plans off of. So he went out into the booth, and we're all sitting there, and then he goes to the vocal booth and puts down a vocal, and the guys from the ad agency came out and said, Wilson, if you do another take, you need to enunciate a little more clearly. And I can't repeat everything he said. Blankety blank. Get your blanky blank rear back to the control room. I'm Wilson Pickett. Don't tell me how to blankety blankety blank sing. You know, he says, I don't even drink this blankety blank. Boy, he was just running. Maybe, I don't know, 22. That guy got back in the control room. And offering many more advice.
All right, I think we have time now for a few questions. Anybody would like to ask them anything?
I have a question.
Milton?
I know you guys said, you know, it felt right from the get-go, but we all know it takes a little bit of growing pains. What was the first time you all four looked at each other and said, this is it? Was it from that first session, or was there a little time to get familiar with each other?
Well, I guess we were trying to put the section together there at Fame, and there was just certain couple of people that we, you know, didn't fit in real good.
Yeah.
And after Charles came in there with us for 71, then we looked at each other and said, that's it. We got it. This is it, because we worked like a glove. Everything we did was almost perfect to me. And we just fit in and said, that's it, let's just get going.
Callaway and I knew each other from Tennessee State, and we had the same instructors, so we played together real good.
We did. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I just want to thank you for recognizing the ability to get this together. I just think that you did an awesome job.
I'd just like to say thank you so much, everybody, for coming out, man. And, it really means a lot to us, and I hope people will send us pictures and everything. It's the first time we've been together in 30 years. Man, I'm nervous, but man, this is just incredible. Thank you so much.
I guess we're about to wrap it up. Is it Georgia or Ellison back there?
Andreas, I'd like to say one more thing. Kind of sentimental, but I haven't seen my daughter, my ex-wife, in quite a while. And they're here. My daughter, Satori Callaway, and my wife, Charlotte Callaway.
All right, I just want to thank everybody for coming. Are we about?
Can I say just one more thing?
Okay.
Well, yeah, thank you very much for coming. I just wanted to point out that these posters and these shirts, we made them for the event, and they are for sale. And also, they will all be happy to sign them, and you will tell everybody, I guess, how that's going to work. And also, the CDs, just want to make just a quick little bit of self-promotion. I made an album with Charles and Harvey and the Horns a couple of years ago, and it's not really for sale at all, but because I just did it to showcase what I can do as a producer and songwriter, but they are for sale too, and some of these shirts, and I don't really want to make any money off of them, but it will help me put together events like this in the future and pays for gas, and because I hope we can do some other cool things here in the future. We went to Florida, Italy last year. We'll go to New York this summer. There will also be a Muscle Shoals All-Star type of show on the 20th of June during July during Handy Fest. There's going to be a full Muscle Shoals production with Carla Russell singing, and hopefully a lot of cool things coming up, and hopefully that somehow we can include like all the great musicians here too. That's important to me. Anyway, thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, make one other quick comment. Where's that up?
Seven something.
This CD, my brother alerted me several years back that this was plagiarized by the English band Humble Pie. And, it's an anthology called Hot and Nasty, and it's basically the same cover. And 4 or 5 months ago, I was kind of bored, and I went, well, maybe they both plagiarized an existing work of art, and I researched it. And I found the artist that did this cover on Facebook, and I sent her a Facebook message, and she had no idea about, her memory of it. And she believed she was plagiarized, and the guy who did the Humble Pie album was the guy who did the Sgt. Pepper's album. It's hard for me to imagine that you plagiarized Muscle Shoals Horns. But if you check it out on the internet, it's Humble Pie Hot and Nasty. It's almost identical.
I do want to say one quick thing. The story of Andreas and how we met is truly a testament to the power of Muscle Shoals music. Andreas is from Switzerland. He does not have a southern accent. I had to figure that out. And he just literally wandered into our office 4 or 5 years ago. I'm from Switzerland. I love Muscle Shoals music. I'm here to meet the Swampers and the Horns, and I want to make an album. I thought, well, okay. And he starts coming back, 3 or 4 times a year, and it wasn't very long. He made his album. He has made wonderful friends, and he truly is a worldwide ambassador for Muscle Shoals music. He put together the show in Italy and got all of them over there. He's put together this show in New York at Lincoln Center and brought this to us today. So Andreas, thank you. I think he's doing what everybody that lives in the Shoals need to be doing is screaming from the rooftops how fabulous it is. A break to kind of cool off a little bit. We're going to take the musicians into our boardroom. It's probably a little bit cooler. So we'll if you haven't purchased merchandise and need to, if you have anything you need autographed, we'll get everybody lined up and flow it into the boardroom. And again, thank you for coming today. Thank you for sitting through these tight quarters. We appreciate it. And thank you so much. We're very honored that you chose to do this at our visitor center. So if you guys want to follow me, we'll get you going.